That's James's meal. It's hazelnuts, saskatoon spinach with a mango sauce, cucumber, and baked potatoes. And he's having marble cake with saskatoons for dessert. And I'm going to talk about Arcadia, which got the top of the stack rating. And then Timeless Season 1 and the Hummingbird Project. And I'm just eating some leftover rice for dinner and some mint tea.
You're having some marble cake.
And some marble cake.
Saskatoons.
Yes, saskatoons.
And saskatoons that you picked, these are the last saskatoons that I picked. Mm-hmm. Was that yesterday? Yeah. It's pretty fancy stuff.
But I have lots more than I picked.
Yeah, well...
I didn't eat as many yesterday, and I picked faster than James, I think.
Oh, well, it's not so much picking faster. I have to really... A lot of these things seem to like to go on slopes there. Mm-hmm. North-facing slopes, and some of them are quite steep, and I have to really watch so I don't slip. My back is in bad shape. I've got 5 fractured vertebrae. And how serious are they? They're compression fractures. I lost the inch of height for each one of those compressed vertebrae. So,
yeah.
Not that much fun. I want to make sure that...
I forgot to do the reviews. I was so hungry.
You haven't eaten yet, I guess, today, right?
No.
Whereas I have eaten quite substantially.
Yeah, I got gardening and stuff. So
I'm actually going to eat the dessert first because I'm going to have to mingle this all together. So,
do what you want. Arcadia. So it was okay. None of these movies were really great, but it just so happened that this one got top of the stack today. It featured child actors who actually did a decent job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Must have been good directing, maybe.
Yeah.
Are they
amazing.
related, some of them, to each other, maybe?
But I don't know if they were in real life. Anyway, it's a movie about a dad who's moving his 3 kids. One of them's a teenager, and the other one is coming of age as a teenager. Anyway, so the ages are spaced out. He's moving them across the country to California.
That was it? Yeah. Where are they coming from?
Big road trip. New England or something. Like, it was a great distance that they went. So anyway, he's been telling them we're going to stop at the Grand Canyon, and that's kind of funny. You know, I've heard stories about recently. Somebody told me that they went down to Glacier
National Park in the
United States, and they wanted to charge them $50 to get into Glacier or something like that, and they were like bartering at the gate. They were like, "Well, we could get you in for," and the guy was like, "Forget it,"
Which guy was?
The guy who told us
at the gate. Oh, the guy. He was saying, "Forget it."
Yeah, he's forget this. I'm going back to Canada, and so he just went back to Waterton. Yeah. And honestly, like,
if you buy a season pass, you can get into Waterton. We've been able to get in there for roughly $10 a visit.
Yeah, a visit.
And it's going
because
down.
We go often, right? So, so we bought the family pass, which at the time I was like, well, that's kind of two adults, whatever. But for a family pass, but it really didn't even matter that we spent $150 for the family pass because we're using it so much. So each trip there it doesn't cost a lot. But honestly, I think that when it's not your country and you're going to a national park, I think you should pay more, honestly.
Than the citizens do. No?
Yeah. And so when the guy told me that, I was thinking, well, it's really, we're going to somebody else's country and going
they
to
have
their
to
park.
support the infrastructure in the park.
Exactly. And the roads to get there and the whatever, right? It's you shouldn't just expect that you can go to some other country's national parks and get in there for cheap or whatever. But in this case, in the movie, this is his national park, and here he's having to, he's a citizen.
Did he have to pay $50 too to get?
It would have been $49, and so I was reminded of that guy telling me the story, right? And at the time I was thinking, I haven't seen the Grand Canyon, but it'd be worth $50 for me to see it. Like I would pay that to go in.
For the first time, for sure.
For sure. So anyway, and I was thinking, if they raised the prices so I had to pay $50 to go to Waterton, I guess I'd pay that too because I love it, right? And it makes, as far as I'm concerned, with national parks, especially for people who live in the city, that's their backyard. Because I don't feel like it's natural for me to be in the city. I can't stand it. I hate it. I get really anxious, and I think most people do. I think that's why a lot of people have anxiety issues and stuff like that. We can't live like this. And
it's of course gotten worse over
yeah.
the years.
And so we have to have that. We have to have some natural lands to go to so we can breathe again, so we can relax again, and then we can get back to living a life that's really not livable for us. So I think with the national parks, I don't even know if citizens should have to pay to get into them, but to pay a bit, whatever, sure, okay. But when tourists come, they should have to pay a lot to get into them. And I had this one economics professor who he said, well, with the national parks, if people should have to pay to, or else they like, he was of the opinion that, well, we should exploit their resources and just totally destroy the national parks if they're not paying for themselves. They should pay for themselves, but make the tourists pay for them. They should pay for them.
That was the little guy in economics department. Small guy.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's a small fellow that was saying that?
I don't know of any of the people in the economics department who are small fellows, so I don't know who
Well,
you're
there was
talking
one. Anyway, you were talking about the guy with the brush cut.
No, I'm not. Anyway, he was one of my instructors, and that's what he thought.
Initials KK?
Yes.
Yeah. I think he's somewhat small. Yeah.
But I think that if you want people to live in cities, especially people who have to live in apartment buildings and stuff, and go to work every day in some horrible job where they're a laborer or something, it's just like their life is really not livable. You have to give them something so that they can recharge. Anyway, it's an interesting movie. It's basically set in a car and hotels along the way and whatever, but it's okay. Timeless season 1. This was really typical of cheesy sort of made in Canada, BC, whatever projects it's that are supposed to be set in the United States, whatever, and they're trying to market them to Americans rather than Canadians, and fine. I watch a lot of this crap. It's something that I like having something on in the background while I'm doing other things, cooking, whatever. So I like the fact that their spaceship looked like an eye, because it's kind of makes you think, well, how do you see things, right? And so I'm watching this. It's a time travel show.
So it's a time ship?
It's a time ship.
Spaceship?
Sorry, I guess space and time. Yeah, okay. They're moving around, but
yeah, that's right. They were going to different spaces.
So, in any case, I like the fact that it looked like an eye because it makes you think about people's perception, how you see things, and throughout this whole season, I'm looking at things going, okay, well, these people are plunked into chasing after this other guy who's traveling in time, and these people's assumptions, like at first, I'll tell you, something happens right away. The one woman, the one time traveler, she comes back and her sister's not there anymore. Her sister doesn't exist. And she's like, well, we got to fix this, so, but I'm watching it going, well, maybe her sister never did exist. She was not within the time, this space-time machine. She had her sister, and then she went into the space-time machine. Her sister's not there. But she has no idea. If you're not in the machine, you wouldn't know if that sister was actually there before. Do you see? Because they're chasing this guy who's altering time. So he might have already altered it so that she had a sister. Do you see what I'm saying? So, and at the first episode, when at one point the guy, one time traveler, the one young man, he wants to save one woman because she looks like his wife who had died. And it ends up he doesn't save her, she dies anyway. And his traveling mate, she's trying to reassure him by saying, well, maybe we can't, that's just not meant to be, maybe we can't save people or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's not true though, because this other guy that you're following, he's altering time. Like he made in this very episode, he just changed a whole bunch of things. Mm-hmm. And the Hindenburg didn't crash until like the next day or whatever, or explode, blah, whatever. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, should I even bother watching any more of this show? Because it's so stupid. But there are things about it that I like. I do like the fact that they're trying to be historically accurate when they're jumping through time. You could learn a little bit about history. Yeah.
You'd want to check things up, of course.
Sure. But it might get you interested in checking things up. So I like that.
It's very Americano-centric history.
Yeah.
So it's funny if it's coming out of BC because what has it got? The Hindenburg disaster.
Yeah, everything was.
What was
US.
The one in '62?
There was the Alamo thing. There was
the Alamo.
Something about Nixon, and you have this kind of
Watergate. Yeah, the Watergate was there.
Yeah, you have this sort of thing in the background. These guys are traveling through time, and then there's agents that are trying to control them or something like that, and they're called Rittenhouse. And I'm like, Rittenhouse, that's interesting, right? Because you're thinking, okay, well, you kind of get this idea of how much has history changed in our recording of history. You get this because they're trying to control the people jumping through time. They're trying to control history, Rittenhouses, and their control over it, right? So you get that kind of in this by watching that. You kind of think, okay, you're reminded of people who have a voice, people who haven't had a voice in history, and how some people have had control over the history that we know. Right? So that's kind of interesting too. So there's enough here, I think, that's interesting that makes it worth watching. Also, I mean, because you have the whole they play on different things. Like they'll say at one point the one man's has FBI identification, so he's Fox Mulder. So they're playing with that the whole time. They have different, or one guy, he's Wesley Snipes. That's what his driver's license says when he's back in time. So they have fun with that, and it's fun, right? It's fun for us to watch too. And with the whole Rittenhouse thing and that conflict, you kind of feel like they're like three people rather than two, but like Scully and Mulder that are having to deal with these other people too. Anyway, so it's interesting enough to watch.
I kind of enjoyed listening to it in the background.
Yeah.
I remember some of the details and things
Yeah.
like that. There was what was the one in '62 about? Was that the Cuban Missile Crisis?
I don't
It
remember
would have
that.
involved Kennedy or something. Anyway,
There, I don't know. There was,
not to worry.
I don't remember all the stories.
Yeah, exactly. Just wondering.
The
I thought I heard Jesse Eisenberg
Yeah.
something.
The Hummingbird Project, and this has that Alexander Skarsgård in it, and Selma Hayek as well. And I enjoy all of these actors. And out of these actors, Jesse Eisenberg is the one that I enjoy the least. But they all did a great job. It's just that the vehicle wasn't. Honestly, nobody would want to care. Nobody would care about this part of history to watch a movie about it. I just don't. So anyway, I'll tell you what happened in this. It's about a guy who he's Alexander Skarsgård is playing the character of a really talented computer person who is wanting to build a fiber optic cable so that he can save not very much time. It's like milliseconds, so that from this stock exchange and whatever. And so anyway,
This is so he can beat the stock market. Is that
well, yeah, so they get this wealthy guy to invest in everything so that they can make a lot of money. And really, the computer guy, he just wants to see if he can do it, kind of thing, right? He's a analytical sort of person, and he doesn't like having to work in an office with other people or anything like that. Most analytical people, they just want their own space. They want to get their work done alone. They don't need other people to help them, and they don't want to be around other people. They want to get their work done. And that's like him. Like his cousin doesn't really understand him exactly because he's not that personality type, but he sees that his cousin's very talented and he wants to be a part of that. His cousin's more an aggressive ruler sort of person who his father has taught him, you got to succeed, and so he's working hard, and he gets stomach cancer, but he needs treatment, but he's got to get this project done. Like, that's more important to him, to be successful, to get this project done, than to actually take care of his cancer, which he needs to do, so they're very different personality types, but they're getting this job done. And unfortunately, by the time they get it done, they actually manage to do it, but by the time they get it done, it's obsolete what they've worked on. So
is it based on a real story?
Yeah, I think so. It's if it's not, then I don't know at all why they did it. So I sure hope it was based on a real story, because otherwise, really, really boring. Anyway, there's one thing that's interesting, like the computer guy, he's like, I just want to live out, I want a piece of land where I can relax, where there's nobody around to bother me. And he's calling it the Hummingbird Project. And I'm like, wow, how many people want that? How many people need to be out, away from other people? They can't have people bothering. They can't live this life anymore. And I could really relate to that, right? And he still wanted to get his work done. Like his cousin didn't understand. His cousin's like, yeah, you can lay around and go swim in the lake. And he's like, well, I do my computer programming, but I do it without anybody around, kind of thing. Like, he still wants to do his work. He doesn't want to have to deal with other people. And why should he have to? I mean, it's the Selma Hayek's character. She's a parasite. she's somebody who's, and so is his cousin, frankly. You know, they're using him and other people like him, the analytical people, to actually do things for them. And honestly, they're using the amiable people too, because amiable people, they're doing other work and they're paying for the use of whatever. So it's and why shouldn't they be able to have the Hummingbird Project too? You know, like where they shouldn't need to be parasitized constantly every day just to exist. It's anyway. So I could get that, but I just didn't like the movie. I thought it was that nobody would care about a fiber optic whatever. And one thing is interesting in this, they're trying to drill through a national park. They're trying to get permission, and the wealthy guy's like, yeah, that's no problem. I can handle that, you know, because wealthy people have connections and they can get things like this done, you know. And at first, like Jesse Eisenberg's character is like, oh, like he was surprised that it would be that easy, right? But you know, that's money talks, right? And some people have power and others do not. So, but it makes you think, right? They're going through the Appalachians. It's supposed to be protected area, and another part they're going drilling under some Amish people's land, and the Amish people want nothing to do with it. They're offering huge amounts of money to the Amish people, and they're like, no, we don't want it, you know. Go talk to our neighbors, they'll be interested, we don't want it, you know. Because they're already living the dream. They have the Hummingbird Project, you know. They're like the computer guy, he wanted to be on a farm with hummingbirds around him. Well, he just does his work in peace. And the Amish people had that, you know. They were like, faster isn't better. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Anyway, I should let James talk. He's probably gnashing at the bit wanting to talk about After America.
Not overly. How much? 5
7 minutes.
So Pauline said money talks. You know, when it's big money, it's more like what Bob Dylan sang or intoned in a song. I think it would have been 1965. It's all right, Mom. I'm only bleeding. But the line is, money doesn't talk, it swears. And of course, this guy's making excuses for the people who swear using money. His name's Mark Stein. He's a Canadian by origin. And so he's not a very nice guy, but he does raise some points, as Dinesh D'Souza does in Liberal Education. It's another not very nice guy, Dinesh D'Souza. I think he's gone on record as being a supporter, kind of like a jock. Is that another word for jock? Supporter? Anyway, a supporter of Donald Trump. So he's kind of got supporter itch. At any rate, if you know what I mean. Anyway, it's there's some stuff here, you know, like when it comes to folks like Mark Stein, supporters of global capitalism, and supporters of the populist Donald Trump stuff, supporters of militias, supporters of Antifa, supporters of communism, supporters of Nazism, supporters of fascism, supporters of fundamentalist religions. Some are more fundamentalist than others. The second biggest religion in the world is very fundamentalist. That's the mainline version of this fundamentalist. It's a fundamentalist form of Judaism. Not so, it's supposed to be the Judeo-Christian tradition. There are a few Christian borrowings, but almost entirely it's borrowings, appropriation, shall we say. Some of them very offensive, really. of the Judaic tradition, except the Judaic tradition is, there are some fundamentalists, but primarily the main version of it is quite is quite civilized by comparison with almost any other religion. But yeah, this the second biggest religion in the world is the mainstream of it is fundamentalist, and it was fundamentalist right from the get-go. It was more fundamentalist than the Judaism of its time. It was founded roughly 600 AD. At any rate, this is, I like when you get these various sorts of extremism, global capitalism. I call it all corporatist. That's, I can't remember what it was applied to. It might have been applied originally to Catholicism or something like that. But now it gets applied to Nazism or fascism. It should be applied to communism. And it should be applied to Catholicism, any religion that doesn't believe in separation of church and state. So we're looking at Michelle Obama paper, page 152. A separationist. So this is something that was her thesis paper. A separationist is more, yeah. So, and this was apparently at Princeton of all places. She was let in apparently. She didn't get the test on SATs or something like that. So she was let in as part of affirmative action, and she seems to have a grievance about that. She doesn't seem to like the fact that the test, she got mediocre grades, and I guess that gave her an impression that it's kind of mediocre. I will talk about affirmative action actually before we go into this. You know, like mediocre grades. Yeah, I've actually read Mikhail Baryshnikov's biography. I think it's ghostwritten autobiography. And so he's a ballet dancer, maybe the best male ballet dancer of his time. Certainly is. Do they call it a character dancer? Not so much. In Nureyev could do a solo dance, but he was a big guy, so he's quite effective when it came to doing the pas de deux or something like that, where he's dancing with a female partner, toss her around. Baryshnikov is a smaller kind of guy. And in his autobiography, I believe his autobiography, talks about being trained by a guy who started ballet too late to become one of the greats. So he ended up, this guy who trained Baryshnikov, being a kind of like a coach, dance coach, whatever term they use. And one thing he said to Baryshnikov really resonated with me. I have taken a little bit of dance, including ballet. It wasn't very good. I had trouble with my back, and it really affected my flexibility, the hip area. So it goes. You know, you try things out, and if they don't work out, at least you try. And what this trainer said to Baryshnikov, as I said, resonated. He said, look at that mirror. So when you're in a dance studio for ballet, probably for other ones too, you'll have a bar, B-A-R-R-E, but it's a bar. So recall it's made out of wood. And it's kind of like attached right to a big mirror. A mirror of the whole side of a classroom, the long side of a classroom.